Does the name Muhammad Atta set off an alarm in your head? Chances are you recognize the name of the man believed to be the ringleader in the September 11th attacks on the World Trade Center. So how is it student visas issued to Atta and another of the terrorists managed to escape the eyes of everyone at the Immigration and Naturalization Service? The idea may make you roll your eyes, and probably a few heads will roll over this one too. We'll give you a chance to comment about that today, so give me a buzz, 1-800-310-4CNN, or email talkback@cnn.com. Right now, let's take a look at what else we're talking about today. Are you surprised by Rosie O'Donnell's not-so-big secret?
For Rosie, this is a much bigger story than her own sexuality.
Maybe it's about her book, and maybe it's about her kids. Will Rosie be the poster child for gay adoptions? Also, when identified terrorists can get student visas, you gotta wonder.
What the hell do we do to get denied a visa in this country, huh?
Yeah, Jay, a lot of us would like to know that as well. We're here to talk about INS lapses are Dan Stein, Executive Director of the Federation for American Immigration Reform, Frank Sherry, Executive Director of the National Immigration Forum, and here with me right here in Atlanta, former INS Director, District Director Tom Fisher. Mr. Fisher, I want to start with you and ask you the big question that everybody wants to know, which is how did this happen?
Obviously, it's a management goof. The process is broken. It needs to be fixed. The individuals, as you noted, did receive an approval notice prior to 9/11, and not that it makes anything good, but to receive the approval notices 6 months after 9/11 is just unacceptable.
So would explain to us, just break it down for us, how do you go about getting a student visa?
You go two ways primarily, and let's talk about the two individuals here. Both of those individuals were here in this country. They came here as tourists. They had non-immigrant visas issued to them by the Department of State overseas. When they entered this country, they were obviously sharp enough and shrewd enough to get by the admission process to tell the immigration inspector that they were basically tourists or here for business purposes.
So let me understand. So they came here, they were on tourist visas.
That's correct.
And then they enrolled.
No. Then they went to a flight school.
Right.
And based upon the conditions of the tourist visa, they could take a limited number of hours, like 18 hours a week, legally to meet that requirement. When they decided they wanted to take a full-time pilot program,
right,
then the school, which is a designated school and approved by the Immigration Service to participate in the foreign student program, then filed a change of status for them to change their status from a B2 non-immigrant to an M1 vocational student, which was approved prior to 9/11, and the final notice came out on March 11th.
Yeah, but see, that's wrong. That's wrong. How do it's almost like the school's arbitrarily saying, oh, these people are okay, so let them go ahead and get a student visa. I mean, there's a problem there.
Obviously, that program is not time sensitive. I mean,
no, but
that
you know
speaks
what?
for itself.
But they keep talking about time sensitive. Let's be for real here, and that is the fact that no terrorist or anybody who's coming here to do wrong, they're not going to put it on their resume. Hey, look, this is what I do. I'm a known terrorist. They're not going to put it there. So to me, there's got to be some system in place that red flags these people.
There was a system in place, and unfortunately, there were two of them, and both of them are broken. One is Atta received his non-immigrant visa in Germany. He should not have. He should have been sent back to his home country to be processed by the American consul or embassy in that country. The American State Department accepted jurisdiction of him in Germany and issued him the non-immigrant visa. Secondly, INS started a program in 1995, which was curtailed in 1999, which was a sophisticated database program that really would have perhaps caught these individuals, and it was stopped.
And why was it curtailed? Too much money?
Foreign students in America is a $2 billion business, and the National Association for Foreign Students didn't want the foreign students to pay $180 a year to participate in the program.
So mean green is more important than red flags.
Unfortunately, it's probably true.
All right, listen, we have a statement here from the INS. I'd like to pop it up on the screen and share it with everybody. It says, it is important to emphasize that the decisions regarding the request to change status were made in the summer of 2001, prior to the tragic events of September 11th. It is equally important to recognize that when the applications were approved, the INS had no information indicating that Atta or al-Shehhi had ties to terrorist organizations. Again, I'm going to let my other guest weigh in here now. Frank Sherry, it's not as if a terrorist is going to say, hey, look, you know, they're not going to make themselves known. They're not going to put it on their resume.
That's right. Now, this points to a number of problems. Clearly, it was a failure of immigration policy, but it was mainly a failure of intelligence. Unless our gatekeepers at our consulates overseas, at our INS inspectors at points of entry to the United States know who the potential terrorists are, they're not going to know whether to keep them out or not. What was really pointed out by 9/11 is that we need to put the terrorists on the run, identify who they are, share that intelligence with our gatekeepers, and keep out potential terrorists before they ever get on U.S. soil.
Dan Stein, what do you have to say about this?
Obviously, we've got a whole systemic failure. It's a continuation of a process we've talked about for years at FAIR, that the whole legal system in immigration doesn't work. The immigration system is broken with 9 million people here illegally, people who've overstayed visas. We've got folks in Congress who carry the water for special interests to help reward lawbreakers. You know, back as recently as 2000, we had Senators Leahy and Senator Ashcroft himself, Attorney General, asking the INS to hold back on the foreign student visa tracking system because the universities and schools didn't want to pay a fee and have more responsibility to monitor and track foreign students. We want the president to initiate top-to-bottom overhaul and review of how we manage migration generally, immigration totally, because it's broken at virtually every phase of the operation. And this incident is so tragically emblematic of what is wrong with how we try to manage migration. And if we can't get control of the numbers, we've got to have to cut them back, cut back the overall immigration flow until we get control of the process.
Travis from Texas, what do you have to say about this?
Well, what he's saying is true. To change your status from a visitor to a student is very easy. When I worked in a community college in Houston, in the student visa office, it's a big money industry. Those people pay the students, pay the tuitions that are astronomically high, and they get their visas changed, and they get their change before it is approved by the INS because of deadlines. So you have students who come here, change their visas, or visitors who come here, change their visas, go to school, pay $2,000 a semester at a community college for tuition. No one knows why or what their plans do.
That's right, and you're right, Travis, because international students give between $9 billion and $13 billion a year to U.S. schools. And here we are again talking about the issue of money, and that money is ruling. I've got to take a break right now, but when we come back, I want to ask you at home and our panelists, should we shut down the immigration system, shut down the shores and doors until it's fixed? We'll talk about that when we come back.
Come to the right place. You can feel the spirit. And it's good to get together and enjoy some awesome steak. So don't just go out. Go Outback. Outback Steakhouse. No rules, just right.
I have to admit, I'd never given it that much thought. Taking different medicines at the same time, I mean. But you have to be careful. I had this bad cold, so I started taking a cold medicine and then a pain reliever to bring down my fever, until my wife pointed out that the cold medicine already contained a pain reliever. So I was actually taking double the dose without even realizing it. The best way to be sure is to know your medicines. Always compare labels. Take the time to be careful.
Oh boy, diarrhea and gas and cramps too. Good thing there's Imodium Advanced Caplets, the only one with 2 medicines to stop diarrhea, gas, and cramps all at once. Whew. What a relief.
Tonight, rocked by deadly violence and looking for hope. What will it take to bring peace to the Middle East? Live from Jerusalem. Then a shocking discovery. She was married to 6 men at the same time. One of her husbands speaks out on the point. Tonight on CNN. Mission accomplished, or is it? Find out if Al-Qaeda can rise to fight again in the war room. Then, should GE's former CEO Jack Welch be forced to give his estranged wife half? In the Crossfire, beginning at 7 Eastern on CNN.
Welcome back. We're talking about that embarrassing follow-up at the INS over student visas. And let's hear what President Bush had to say about this yesterday.
It got my attention this morning when I read about that. I was stunned and not happy. Let me put it another way. I was plenty hot. And I made that clear to people in my administration.
Dan Stein. The president is plenty hot. A lot of people are plenty hot about this. I want to ask you the question, do you think we should just shut down the system, fix it before we let anybody else in here? What do you think about that?
Well, we definitely have to cut back the numbers. What we really need from our politicians is a little reality check and some truth. We need to let the American people in on the secret, which is we virtually lost control of the whole process. And you know, if George Bush was surprised about what happened, well, he's the only guy in Washington who was surprised, given what everybody knows, the litany of GAO reports and other evidence that the INS is simply like not working at any phase of the operation. It's like the plumber. You ever seen a plumber try to fix a pipe without turning off the water? It's a disaster. We've got the highest level of immigration in American history. We're on our way to 500 million people in this country with millions and millions of people who come in illegally, break the laws, then demand to get green cards. The Immigration Service can't keep up with it. The State Department's clearly overwhelmed. What is it going to take for our political leadership to get the message? This is not just about people coming across to pick cantaloupes. It's about national security, vital strategic interest, the public safety. I hate to think what's going to happen if we don't get a more serious response from Congress than what we've seen today.
And there needs to be some sort of cross-referencing here between the universities and the INS.
They've got to stop fighting every proposal that gets suggested to try to improve the system. The universities have fought this proposal for years. We've seen special interests, cheap labor interests, big meat packers and others, the Chamber of Commerce. Every single proposal that's put on the table to try to fix the immigration mess, if it interferes with somebody's private greed agenda or somebody's political ethnic power block agenda, it never gets off the ground.
Marcus.
You know, like just the other day, Congress passed an amnesty. House just passed an amnesty. The Senate's going to vote on it any day. It's called Section 245I. A huge new workload is going to be added to the Immigration Service to adjust all these applications when nobody's provided them the resources.
Frank, let me let you jump in there. I see you're shaking your head, and then I'm going to get to my guest here.
Look, unlike Dan, and I'm not normally in the habit of defending President Bush, but he's got it right on immigration. What he has said is that there's a difference between immigrants who come to seek the American dream and a small handful of suicide bombers who come to kill innocent Americans. And we have to be able to distinguish between letting people in who spend money and go to university and want a small number who come to settle and make a new life, and those people who come here to do us harm. We need to identify who they are, keep them out before they're here, have a better handle on who's coming into not only the United States, but into North America, work with our Canadian and Mexican colleagues to have a better idea of who's crossing our border, who's going to universities here. We can take a number of sensible targeted steps. We also have to fix the INS along the lines that President Bush has recommended long before 9/11 and long before this latest tragedy. In fact, it's members of Congress in his own party that are stopping him from moving forward on an INS restructuring plan that will get at the root of the problem.
Let's hope politics don't get in the way of this one. Let's just hope. Okay, Marcos, you are here in San Jose, California, in San Diego, California, in from Costa Rica. Here about 8 months ago, you're on a student visa. What do you think about all of this?
Well, first of all, I do agree that there needs to be more control on the way people come in and out of this country. But at the same time, I do believe that up to this point, there are a lot of limitations and there are a lot of policies that are set up for the entering of us, the international students, to this country. The procedures, it's very...
Let me ask you this, Marcos. What did you have to do, and how long did it take you to apply for your student visa until you actually got one?
Well, first I applied to the college. I went through the normal application process, and I proved that my English proficiency was good enough to enter a college, a United States college. And then I had to wait for the for the university to give me the I-20, the form that proves that I'm going to be enrolled in that school. And
so let me ask you this. So did you have to take a test, a written test, or an essay test or something?
Yeah, I had to take the TOEFL exam, which is the one that proves your English proficiency, and then...
but that's a written exam?
Yes, yes. I mean, you have it in the embassies and back in the international.
Okay, so the school, you get your I-20, you fill out this form, and then what happens?
And then I have to, well, they mail it to me, so that takes like sometimes 2 months after they've proven that either they can give me the financial support through scholarships, and basically that's all we can hope for, because we can't have financial aid or loans because we're...
Right. So then where would you get the financial support from?
Just scholarships. I mean, I applied because of my academics and my extracurricular activities, and all those amounted up to certain scholarships that aided me in solving the...
So overall, would you say this process was easy or not?
No, it takes a long time.
How long did it take?
Probably about 6-7 months, because after I get my I-20, I have to go to the embassy and go through the whole process.
Thank you for sharing our story. Tom Fisher, I wanted to go to you now. You just heard Marcos' story, and I'd like to re-emphasize to everybody and explain. I think Marcos did a good job in terms of helping us understand how, in fact, you go about getting a visa. And if you can expound on that.
Keep in mind, all schools do not participate in the foreign student program. A university or a vocational school makes an application to the Immigration Service. And based upon certain criteria, for example, accreditation, are the hours transferable? The number of PhDs on their staff, the size of their library, is it FAA approved, and things of that nature. Then the INS would approve and designate 5 officials from that school to sign a form, as Marcus said, called an I-20. Then here I am, I'm in Ireland, and I applied to Georgia State University. Georgia State accepts me based upon my academic achievements.
Right.
They then send me an I-20 form, which the school is designated by the INS to sign. I take that form, I go to the American Embassy in Dublin, I file a non-immigrant application, now it's called the DS-156, along with the I-20, and the State Department wants to, they issue me in my Irish passport an F1 non-immigrant visa, and then I come to Atlanta and I present myself for admission before the immigration inspector.
And that's it?
So
that's too easy in your opinion?
No, it's not too easy. I think the process does work. Certain embassies take longer, certain schools take longer. As Marcus said, it all depends on how efficient the school is, how efficient the embassy is.
So there needs to be a better, overall guideline in place.
There needs to be a better guideline, but as I tend to agree with what Frank said earlier, and what perplexes me now is that since INS decided back in 1999 to forego a good tracking program, there are many tracking programs that the private sector uses for non-immigrants also. When you look at your big corporations like Motorola and Microsoft, who are with the specialty, and a lot of these participants here know what I'm talking about for the specialty jobs, and the tracking process like an IT hub or these have, there's no reason the government couldn't monitor or take a system that they have and quickly implement it for foreign students. One last thing.
I want to ask you something quickly, too, that can you come over here on a student visa for any type of school, cosmetology, if I wanted to go to med school, or...
If the school's approved by INS in a certain academic or vocation, yes.
So it doesn't matter. I can get over here on a cosmetology student visa.
In certain situations, yes. And keep in mind, there are no numerical limitations on foreign students. It's what the market will bear. Each year, the State Department issues approximately 250,000 non-immigrant visas. The INS will admit 250,000. Now, people say that means there's only 250,000 in the country. No, there's probably 600,000 to 700,000, because if I come as a freshman from Ireland, INS is going to put on my little I-94 D/S, duration of status. And as long as I remain an academic, passing my courses, I can stay here for baccalaureate, master's, PhD.
And then not to mention that people are here on expired visas, but that's a whole other story. Dan Stein, I want to let you jump in here before we go. And
yeah, well, we don't, I mean, INS doesn't know if they ever leave. They don't know where all the foreign students are.
I disagree with what Dan's saying there.
Come on, there are a lot of people here who are not on working visas, student visas.
He said students.
Okay, but
if
still, I think so. Go ahead, Dan.
I mean, if a student drops out of a course of study, the problem is the INS doesn't know. They're not notified, or if they are notified, they don't do anything about it. There's a reason why we've got 9 million people here illegally in this country. There's no interior enforcement to ensure departure of people who overstay a visa or go out of status. And that's a big, big, big problem.